Today, we witness a revealing moment in the lives of Jesus' disciples, James and John, filled with ambition and a desire for power. They approached Jesus with a bold request: grant that we may sit, one on your right hand and one on your left, in your glory. Their words reveal the deep-seated misunderstanding of Jesus' kingdom and its nature. Reverend Dr. Sarah Hinckley Wilson aptly describes this scene as a moment of foolish ambition. Blinded by their desires, James and John failed to grasp the true meaning of discipleship. They envisioned a kingdom of earthly power and prestige, mirroring the Roman Empire. However, Jesus' kingdom is radically different. It is a kingdom of service, humility, and self-sacrifice. Like yesterday, the outreach committee put everything together, and the Rosedales sat outside grilling our burgers. And that says that no task is too small or too large for us as congregants. We come together to do the work. Even my 5-year-old was busy bossing Mandy around in the kitchen. Not that he learned to boss women around, just FYI. But he was telling everybody he was the boss. And I said, good luck with that. But at the end of the night, he was quick to help clear the tables. And he got all the tablecloths, or plastic cloths, and threw them in the recycle bin that we put together. But everybody came together. None of the outreach committee members said, well, no, I gotta go, or no, I don't have time for this. And the whole purpose was to host other members of the Christian faith community. And it was a pleasant evening. There's a lot of talking, a lot of smiles, and people held their stomach because we ran a little late at serving. As Bob put it was all cold. Well, some of it had to be cold, so it was already cold. But think about those things as we're talking about today's gospel reading. As Reverend Dr. Matt Skinner points out, Jesus' response to James and John is a gentle rebuke. He reminds them that the true power lies not in domination or control, but in selfless service. He points to the example of his life, a life marked by suffering, sacrifice, and ultimately death. Jesus' kingship is not about earthly glory or political power. It is about radically different kind of leadership. One that is rooted in love, compassion, and humility. As we are in big election season, think back at how many politicians have stepped down from the role because they actually were trying to do stuff for the greater good, and they lost votes because of that. Think that. And I'm not talking one party or the other. Whatever party you want to imagine. There's been members of any party in our political system that have spoken out against the status quo, have done for the greater good, and were pushed aside because of it. See, this is what today's gospel is about. It's about doing for the greater good. It's not about putting ourselves first. I am the best. No, that's what Laura was saying yesterday. I'm the best baker in the congregation. No, she was not. Because then Rita would probably go down with her and start talking. But you get it. It's like our son this morning. And then probably when he gets older and hears some of this, he'll probably kick me in the butt later. But we're not there yet. So I told him, I said, you look really good this morning. He goes, yes, I know. But there's a difference there, right? He's a kid. But if we tell that to an adult and we say, Holly, you look really good this morning. Yes, I know. Might not sit the same way, right? We're like, last time I tell her that. But you get it, right? This is kind of what those disciples are saying. It's like, hey, I want to be there. I want to be in that spot, the VIP seat. See, when we come to this table, there's no RSVP. There's no VIP. Whoever comes, comes. And we let you come because that's what we're supposed to do with each other. The scene with James and John is not an isolated incident. And even in today's world, we know so many situations like that. It reflects a common human tendency to seek power and prestige for ourselves. We often equate success with wealth, fame, and influence. Some of you I've talked to where even clergy are immune to this. They start writing books, they're academics, they're theologians, and suddenly, just like any other person, their head starts growing. And they feel they're elevated up here. See, what I appreciate about our sanctuary is that whoever designed up here kept the pulpit pretty much down to earth. You go to other congregations, where do you see the pulpit? Pretty high. And good thing you don't, because I'm also afraid of heights. So. But think about it. Look at the lectern and look at the pulpit. Same level. What does that say? It says a lot. We're equal. The only difference is that I'm called to be a pastor. That's the only difference between us. You have your profession, I have mine. But we're all children of God. Jesus' teachings remind us that true greatness lies not in domination, but in service. The disciples' misunderstanding of Jesus' kingdom reminds us of our limitations and the dangers of unchecked ambition. It is a call to examine our hearts and ask ourselves what truly motivates us. Are we seeking power for its own sake? Or are we striving to serve others and make a positive difference in the world? I don't know if you've seen a preview for a new movie based out of the Vatican that's supposed to come out within the next few weeks or so. And one of the lines in there from one of the cardinals telling another cardinal is saying that the ones that they have to look out for are the ones who want to become pope. They are the dangerous ones. And think about that. That is so true. When they're so verbal and they're like, oh, I want to be pope, sign me up. Yet those are the ones who are less reluctant, who are like, I don't know if I'm up for the job. Some of you who are in leadership roles in this congregation have shared similar sentiments. I don't know if I'm up for it, but okay, I'll give it a try. What does that say? Versus someone's like, yeah, I'll do it. Now, I'm not talking about volunteering to clean the kitchen. Definitely, if you want to be first, by all means, go for it. But in leadership roles, if you're prepared for it, awesome. But sometimes it's more of the ambition. Look around you. What does that say? Now, there's nothing wrong with having ambition. Many parents raise their children to reach for the sky. And that's phenomenal. That's what we want people to do. There's a difference between that ambition and the power-hungry person. Let's draw inspiration from the extraordinary example set by Jesus, who willingly made the ultimate sacrifice for the betterment of others. Let's turn away from the allure of power and prestige for our personal gain, and instead wholeheartedly adopt a life dedicated to selfless service, genuine humility, and boundless compassion. As we strive to follow Jesus' example, let us remember Hinckley Wilson's words, Jesus is so deep and you're so shallow. Let us strive to deepen our understanding of Jesus' teachings and live our lives by his example. The story of James and John powerfully reminds us of the dangers of unchecked ambition. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of humility and selflessness. However, it is also a story of hope and redemption. Even though James and John initially misunderstood Jesus' teachings, they ultimately followed him and became faithful disciples. See, and that's also when you own it, when you've made mistakes and you own it. And you say, okay, let me learn from that. And you try to do that. It's not about repeating the same constant mistakes. Their journey reminds us that we all make mistakes. It's never too late for change. How many of you are perfect? Bob raised his hand. Most of us think we are, or we strive for perfection, but let's face it, none of us are. None of us. Jacob? No, he's not like that. It's never too late to change. I've told you since I started here that I don't care how old you are. I don't care what your physical abilities are. You can still do something. We're not dead yet. We're still capable of doing something. That's why I don't agree with that sentiment of both the older generations, and I'm not saying any of you in particular, but just in general, and younger generations where they're at each other. The older generation, oh, what do you know? You're young. Get out of my way. I have the experience. And younger generations is like, you're old. Get out of the way. You have to turn. How are we talking to each other? We're not listening to each other. Because at the end of the day, we can learn from each other. Maybe the mistakes that you made as an older generation, the younger generation can learn from them and not make the same ones. And maybe the older generation can take an ear to the younger generation and see, well, this is what we see different. And this is how we feel about things being done differently. I joked last night about how when we had Odell's memorial, the line for food was set up opposite of what we normally do. And I joked around with the Elaines. I said, should I tell them this is not how we do it? Why? Because any church community, what happens? That's not how we do it. Right? It's like telling Laura, that's not how you sit, Laura. You sit over there. No. We try different things. See if they work. And yes, in our head, it's like, this is not how we do it. But you work with it. I've given you a lot of those over the last few years of like, that's not how we do it. Just like I know some of you at first were like, that's not where the communion table goes, Pastor. It does now. And part of it was just logistics. We share our space with others. And for me, just having to come and fix it every Sunday dramatically, unlike this morning, I still fixed it, it was easier just to keep it up there, where it has less movement. And it's a symbolism that we come for. Everything in here, it's physical material. At the end of the day, it does not matter. If we were to be gone tomorrow, that is not the church. Jesus doesn't live on that cross. Jesus is sitting among you. Jesus is embodied in you. Jesus could be the person sitting next to you. That if you say, good morning, good to see you, Mandy. Maybe Mandy was having a really crappy day today. And you said, good morning. And that made her feel seen. And maybe that's all she needed. How many of you have been there where you've had that type of day where you're just like, not feeling it? And someone recognizes you and just say, hey, good morning, how are you today? And most of you, human nature says, I'm fine. And it's like, you're really not fine. So what does that say? See, to follow Jesus is not an easy task. It's hard. It's also recognizing our mistakes and learning from them and doing better. We have to strive to live our lives according to his teachings and be examples of love, compassion, and service to others. See, when the last year, yes, the benefit is we got 2 benches technically for the recycling. But what I was reminded of by Donna Adam yesterday, which is from Clean Up Give Back, is that not only did we help the environment by recycling over the last year, we also extended the education about recycling and the impact it has on our environment. And I hadn't thought about that, at least not actively. And that's a very good point, because how many of you are now a little more familiar with recycling and what plastics we take or not take? And that's just a stepping stone into what we're moving in next. Trinity Lutheran is already ahead of the game. They already have multiple containers for the different type of recycling items. Now, we're not doing this to compete with them, but we're following them in the sense of their example, where they're doing for our environment, they're doing for others. It just doesn't benefit us. Benefits of generations that will come after us. When we sit down to make decisions about this church community and any other church community, a lot of times you have the argument of, well, we don't need it. And if you think about decisions that were made in the yesteryear, oh, well, we won't need it. We're all good. And now we look at the issues that we face today that have the opportunity to be fixed then. Now it's right in our face and we have no choice but to deal with it. Think about that. And that goes with many congregations and organizations. Think about the accessibility to the sanctuary. And I've seen it in multiple churches, even in this area, where it's stairs galore. And how do you get people who don't have that mobility like everybody else into the building? A lot of you can't use our front entrance. Why? There was an opportunity to look at it decades back, probably. It was an oversight. Was it done intentionally? Maybe not. But that's what we have to think. Why do you want Christ Church, United Church of Christ, to survive for tomorrow? Is it for your own selfish reasons? Because I'm still here and I wanted to be here? Or is it because you want others that come after you to enjoy the community that you have been a part of for decades? That is what we have to ask ourselves. How do we serve others, not just ourselves? It's like if you are planning to get your ashes interred in our memorial garden, you really should think of our future. Because what happens if this church community ends its ministry? We don't know what would happen to those ashes, to what would happen to those folks who are in there. So maybe you won't be in there, but you know someone who is, that has an investment in there. Therefore, we should have that investment where we want Christ Church to continue to live, not for our benefit. Yesterday we talked, I think it was Judy and Holly, or Judy and I talked a little bit of Reverend Wabi. I'm sure when he was here, he wasn't just thinking of just me. He was thinking of the future of his church. There's one congregant, and I won't say it publicly, but one congregant who was joking around, kind of poking at me last year. We were in the fellowship hall, and it's like, Pastor Wabi was the best pastor we've ever had. And someone else was in the space, and it's like, Pastor Gilbert's in the space. And I'm like, doesn't bother me. I mean, the fellowship is named Wabi Hall. How am I going to be offended by a man who was obviously a very good leader? For you to turn around and say, this is how we're going to honor him. That says a lot about a person. You honored him. His memory continues to live on. There's pretty much nowhere that I can talk to someone who's familiar with Christ Church who will not mention Reverend Walker. And it'd be different for me, like, oh yeah, I know about him. What does that serve? What does that say about me? No, it says, oh yeah, I've heard nothing but good stuff about the man. That's what we should all strive to be, is be that good model, that good leader. Because that's what Jesus is asking us. The narrative of James and John compellingly reminds us of the detrimental effects of power-hungry behavior among disciples. It emphasizes embracing humility, selflessness, and a commitment to serving others. So let us look to Jesus' exemplary life for inspiration and make a dedicated effort to model our lives by his profound teachings. Amen.